Barbra Streisand, the living icon of music and cinema, has captivated the entire world with her magnificent voice and unforgettable performances. She has enjoyed a life of luxury as the owner of an immense fortune worth 400 million US dollars. From a lavish mansion perched on the cliffs of Malibu, to an opulent penthouse overlooking all of Central Park West, to an elegant apartment on the Upper East Side, every property bears the unmistakable mark of her power class and refined soul. Her collection of classic cars, from Bentley and Mercedes to Rolls-Royce, is a testament to a glorious era, to her sharp personality, and to a sophistication so striking that anyone who comes near it cannot help but marvel in admiration. But behind that curtain of glory, a silent tragedy has been steadily growing like black clouds slowly covering the sky of her life as Barbra turns 83. Her enormous fortune has suddenly become a battlefield, a place where her children constantly pressure her to sell her homes and make a will like violent waves crashing against the proud rocky shore of her life. Her health declines more and more under the burden of cardiovascular disease and prolonged strokes, each heartbeat like a reminder of life's limits and of the crushing pressure that power and money can bring. Barbra still has not been able to make a decision, her heart heavy with pain as she looks into the emptiness left behind by that hesitation. Who will be the last person to walk through the door leading to that entire 400 million US dollar fortune? How is Barbra Streisand living amid bottomless greed and the loneliness of a legend? Let us explore the full story of her life through this video. Now at the age of 83, Barbra Streisand still retains the resilient bearing of a Hollywood icon. She holds in her hands a vast fortune of 400 million US dollars accumulated over decades of singing, acting, and film production. Her luxurious beachfront mansions in Malibu, her collection of rare paintings, and the enormous income from her final concert tours are clear proof of her journey through hardship. And yet that radiance has now been dimmed by the shadow of old age, where loneliness creeps into every corner of the house. She often sits quietly alone by the window, gazing out at the ocean, wondering whether those achievements truly brought her happiness, or whether they were only a shell covering a pain that can never be erased. From her childhood years in impoverished Brooklyn, Barbra lost her father to a stroke related to heart disease when she was only a few months old, a tragedy that left behind a hereditary aftermath that haunted her throughout her life. Her mother, Diana, worked relentlessly to raise her, but the lack of affection caused Barbra to grow up with a deep longing for a real family, something that even a brilliant career could never fully make up for. During long nights, she once whispered to herself, "I conquered the whole world, but why does my heart still feel so empty?" Now at the age of 83, those memories come crashing back like wave after wave, reminding her that success was never a remedy capable of healing old wounds. Barbra's only son, Jason Gould, born in 1966 from her first marriage to Elliot Gould, has been both her pride and her greatest disappointment. Jason, a talented artist, but a private and reserved man, chose to step away from the spotlight that his mother had once hoped he would continue. The relationship between mother and son has grown increasingly distant, with their rare conversations circling only around old memories instead of sharing a future together. Barbra often gazes silently at an old photograph of the two of them. Her heart weighed down. I gave him everything. So why has he drifted so far away from me? That distance, though never spoken aloud, is the deepest cut in her heart. Barbra is always conflicted when thinking about leaving her assets to this son. One reason is that Jason Gould publicly came out as gay when he was only 21 years old in the late 1980s. Although the LGBTQ+ community and activists viewed it as an act of courage, that information reportedly left Streisand deeply disappointed. Many close sources claim that she did not agree with her son making his private life public because it went against the traditional values she had long upheld regarding family and personal image. That disappointment has significantly affected the way Streisand sees her personal legacy and her fortune. She is said to have considered not wanting to leave that entire enormous estate to her son. She worries that Jason's choices could lead to her wealth being used in ways she never wanted, and that has created an underlying tension within the family. In addition, Streisand is also known as someone with strong views about maintaining control over her own career and image. Jason's public disclosure of his sexual orientation made her feel that she had lost part of that control over her private life and her family's public image. According to some sources, this too contributed to her hesitation in distributing her assets in the traditional way. When she entered her second marriage to James Brolin in 1998, Barbara once believed that she had finally found a complete family with his 3 children from a previous relationship: Josh, Jess, and Molly Elizabeth. She loved them as if they were her own children, giving them luxurious gifts and sincere advice. And yet at the age of 83, she has begun to notice furtive glances and increasingly infrequent phone calls of concern that nevertheless often bring up financial future. She wonders whether that love is truly unconditional or merely a covering for their waiting for the day she departs so that they can rush into a battle over her enormous fortune. Barbara's real estate holdings, from the vast Malibu estate covered in lush greenery to the luxurious apartments in New York, are not merely assets, but fragments of memory from her life. She once spent tens of thousands of dollars to clone her beloved dog Samantha, hoping to preserve a lingering trace of warmth from the past. Yet now those very assets have become a burden, as she is constantly haunted by the fear that after her death, everything will be torn apart by disputes between Jason and her adopted children. More than once, she has lain awake through the night, imagining her cherished mansion being divided and asking herself in anguish, "I built everything from nothing, so why has it now become the blade that tears my own family apart?" Barbara has loved wholeheartedly through many relationships, from John Peters, the dramatic hairstylist, to the young tennis player Andre Agassi, as well as brief romances with Don Johnson and Pierre Trudeau. Those relationships brought her fleeting moments of happiness, but also left behind many wounds, from rumors of infidelity to suffocating control. Even her marriage to James Brolin, her final anchor, has not been entirely free from vague suspicions. At the age of 83, looking back on it all, she can only sigh. "I gave my heart to so many people, but in the end, all that remains is loneliness and unanswered questions." The tragedy seems to continue as Barbara's health weakens over time, with signs of aging that can no longer be hidden. The heart condition inherited from her father, who passed away at 34 from a stroke, has now become a constant haunting fear. She frequently feels fleeting chest pains, irregular heartbeats that force her to stop mid-step, and doctors continuously warn of increasing risks in older women. Ironically, despite having spent millions of dollars to establish a cardiovascular research center for women, she herself has now become a victim of the disease, as routine checkups gradually turn into a constant source of anxiety. Mild strokes have begun to appear in recent years, causing her hands to tremble whenever she holds a pen to sign her name, and her once legendary voice now occasionally falters and stumbles. Not only that, age-related conditions such as arthritis also torment her body, making movement within her vast mansion increasingly difficult, while prolonged fatigue forces her to cancel her final recording sessions. She still tries to hide everything, smiling in front of the mirror as if nothing is wrong, but deep inside she knows that her body is slowly betraying her little by little, like a melancholic melody quietly approaching its final note. Her $400 million fortune, with countless valuable music copyrights and high-priced real estate, has now become the greatest burden at the end of her life. But what pains her even more is the change in the eyes of those she once considered family. Her son, Jason Gould, and her 3 adopted children, Josh, Jess, and Molly Elizabeth, who now resemble vultures waiting for the moment she collapses so they can swoop in and fight over her inheritance. One late afternoon in 2025, Josh Brolin walked into the house with a forced smile, followed by a strange lawyer dressed in a black suit. "Mom, we need to talk about the future." Josh began coldly placing his hand on her shoulder as if to comfort her, but his eyes were fixed on the $20 million John Singer Sargent painting hanging on the wall. He urged her to sign a document called an asset management plan, but despite her weakening condition, Barbara recognized it as a draft will in which most of the real estate would be transferred to Josh and his siblings. She clenched her hands tightly, her heart aching not only from illness, but from the sense of betrayal by someone she had once loved like her own child. Jason Gould. Her only son, who had long been distant, suddenly returned after years of little contact. However, his return did not bring the warmth of family as she had hoped. During a tense evening, Jason sat across from his mother, his voice trembling yet firm. "Mom, you can't keep this house forever. Sell it and divide the money among us so everyone feels less pressure." Barbara froze, staring into her son's eyes. Eyes once filled with love, now distant and cold. She realized that Jason did not only want money for comfort, but also to assert his position in front of his step-siblings, those who had always made him feel inferior. Choking back emotion, she whispered, "Jason, you are everything I have. Why do you also want to push me to the edge?" Jess and Molly. Elizabeth. The two adopted children, who appeared less frequently in public, were not standing aside either. In a video call, they repeatedly suggested that the Malibu mansion, worth over $100 million had become a burden on Barbara's health. "Mom, you should rest. Let us handle selling the house," Molly said gently, though her hidden intent was hard to conceal. Jess, usually reserved, even brought a real estate agent to meet Barbara, offering an attractive price to quickly sell the property. Though exhausted from arthritis and heart pain, Barbara was still lucid enough to realize that what they truly cared about was not her health, but converting her assets into cash as quickly as possible to divide among themselves. The tension reached its peak when all three adopted children, along with Jason, appeared one fateful evening bringing 2 lawyers and a thick stack of documents. They surrounded Barbara, who was now frail and sitting in an armchair, demanding that she finalize her will immediately. "Mom, you don't have much time left," Josh said bluntly, his cold gaze alluding to her recent strokes. She looked around, faces once familiar, now seemed strange, all seemingly concerned only with the figure of $400 million. She tried to stand, but a sudden chest pain caused her to collapse, clutching her heart, as she whispered in despair, "Do you want me to die right now so you can take the money?" There was no reply, only the cold sound of papers being flipped by the lawyers. Despite her body growing frail, Barbara still manages to summon a source of strength from deep within the strength of a woman who once overcame poverty and prejudice to build her own empire with her own hands. She firmly refuses to sign the will, pushing the stack of documents away. Her voice trembling, yet resolute. "I spent my entire life building all of this, and I will not let you turn it into a battle." She asks them to leave the house, yet deep down she understands that the door connecting her and her children has closed forever. Up to this point, Barbara has never publicly announced a will, but in her heart she leans toward allocating most of her assets to charities related to cardiovascular health and women's rights, hoping to leave behind a more meaningful legacy than money. Even so, her greatest fear remains the prospect of Jason and her adopted children plunging into legal battles, tearing apart everything she once cherished. During long, sleepless nights, she has whispered to James, "I don't want to leave this world when the last image of my family is one of breaking apart over what I leave behind." At the age of 83, Barbara's greatest tragedy is her loneliness amid the circle of success. Her distant relationship with Jason, her doubts about the sincerity of her adopted children, and her steadily declining health immerse her in a quiet pain. She still softly sings old melodies, but her voice now trembles like a confession to herself. "I lived my whole life to be loved, yet now all that remains is waiting for an ending." Her immense fortune cannot buy genuine embraces, and she understands that her true legacy may be nothing more than scars that have never fully healed. It is difficult to reconcile the image of a dazzling Barbra Streisand possessing $400 million with the little girl who once quietly cried in a small apartment in Brooklyn. Behind that brilliance lies a childhood filled with loss. Barbra Streisand was born on April 24, 1942, in Brooklyn, New York, into a poor Jewish family of Eastern European descent. Her father, Emanuel Streisand, was a devoted teacher but passed away when she was just over a year old, leaving her mother, Diana, to struggle to raise 2 children in the hardships of the post-war period. Barbara's life took a different turn when a man named Lou Keene appeared. He became her stepfather, but never her support or source of comfort. Lou carried a cold and distant demeanor, living withdrawn and making no effort to understand or connect. longing for recognition. Barbra did everything she could to gain his attention, calling him father, bringing him slippers, even choosing silence in his presence. But nothing worked. Years later, she bluntly recalled that memory. Did he like me? Absolutely not. Their living space was cramped and suffocating, mirroring the emotional atmosphere within the family. The small apartment did not even have a private corner. Barbra, her mother, and her brother all had to share one room. For the first 16 years of her life, she had no bedroom of her own, no living room, no sofa, and no place to quietly dream of another world. Perhaps that is why later in life, once she became successful, she devoted so much effort to designing peaceful and luxurious homes as a way to make up for the emptiness of her childhood. The relationship between Barbra and her mother Diana was also a picture full of contradictions. Diana was not cruel, but she was cold and distant. Trapped in the grief of losing her husband, depression, and dependence on tranquilizers, she loved her daughter in the most awkward way. When Barbra left home at 16, her mother's affection was expressed only through bowls of soup and fruit left quietly at the door. It was still love, but it existed in silence and the chill of loneliness. Between mother and daughter, even jealousy sometimes crept in like a fragile crack in a relationship already lacking warmth. Barbra's childhood passed in that cramped apartment without a father's love or financial security. She once shared that she always felt like an outsider, lost even in the crowded Brooklyn neighborhood where her friends had complete families while she did not. From an early age, Barbra possessed a distinctive voice, clear, resonant, and powerful enough to make neighbors stop and listen. But instead of encouragement, the young girl was often criticized for not looking like a star. A large nose, a deep voice, and a strong personality. Her mother, who had once had an unfinished dream of music, did not support her daughter's pursuit of art. "You're not suited to be a singer. Become a teacher," like your father, Diana, once said. Yet those very words of rejection ignited a powerful fire within Barbra, a desire to prove that talent and individuality are what truly create beauty. After graduating from high school, Barbra left Brooklyn for Manhattan, carrying only a few dollars and a dream of standing on a grand stage. She performed at small clubs such as the Bonsoir and the Blue Angel, where audiences sat so close they could hear every breath of the singer. It was her emotionally rich voice and unique performance style that quickly made her stand out. A Broadway producer happened to hear her sing and invited her to audition for the musical I Can Get It For You Wholesale. In 1962, Barbra made her first appearance on a major stage, and with just the supporting role of Miss Marmalstein, she brought the entire theater to its feet in endless applause. Just 1 year later, Barbra signed with Columbia Records. Her debut album, the Barbra Streisand album, 1963, earned her 2 Grammy Awards, including Album of the Year, a rare achievement for an artist not yet 25 years old. At the same time, she continued to shine on Broadway with Funny Girl 1964, portraying Fanny Brice, a girl who did not possess conventional beauty, but had talent and a strong will. That role almost mirrored Barbra's own life. When the film adaptation was released in 1968, she won the Academy Award for Best Actress, officially cementing her status as a top star. The 1970s marked a dazzling peak in Streisand's career. She Guitar appeared in a series of blockbuster films such as Hello, Dolly, The Way We Were, alongside Robert Redford and A Star Is Born. The film's theme song, Evergreen, earned her another Academy Award along with a Grammy, making Barbra one of the very few artists to win the highest honors in both music and film. Not stopping at acting or singing, Barbra was also regarded as a symbol of creative independence, a woman bold enough to be different in a Hollywood long dominated by men. From the mid-1980s, Barbra began to explore directing. The film Yentl, 1983, which she wrote, directed, and starred in, tells the story of a Jewish girl who disguises herself as a man to study the Talmud. The project had been rejected by Hollywood for many years, yet Barbra persistently pursued it. When the film was released, it quickly became a phenomenon and earned her a Golden Globe for Best Director, the first time in the award's history that a woman received this honor. From that point on, Streisand was not only a star, but also a trailblazer for female directors in Hollywood. Entering the 1990s, Barbra continued to achieve success with the film in which she both directed and starred, and the work received 7 Academy Award nominations. Although she did not appear frequently in public, whenever she launched a tour, tickets would sell out within minutes, turning her concerts into record-breaking events. Alongside her artistic career, Barbra also devoted great effort to social causes, establishing the Streisand Foundation to support AIDS research, women's rights, environmental protection, and cardiovascular health. Barbra Streisand is not only famous for her powerful voice, but also known for her intelligence, determination, and influence beyond music. She is the only artist to have a #1 album in 6 consecutive decades from the 1960s through the 2010s. In the public eye, Barbra represents a woman who dares to break norms, believes in her own worth, and builds her own empire in the entertainment industry. The Streisand effect, a term describing the phenomenon where attempts to suppress information only make it spread more widely, also originated from a lawsuit related to her privacy. However, instead of damaging her reputation, the incident turned Barbra into a pop culture icon associated with freedom of speech and the power of the individual in the media age. Alongside her illustrious career came numerous prestigious awards: 10 Grammy Awards, an Academy Award, and a Grammy Lifetime Achievement Award. Yet even at the pinnacle of fame, the pressure never diminished. Success always comes with expectations to constantly innovate, to always deliver to maintain a leading position. Not every project was a complete success. Some albums failed to meet expectations, and some films received mixed reactions. There were times when her voice seemed drowned out by the noise of fame. But instead of stepping back, Barbra chose to adapt. She turned the surrounding noise into a rhythm for transformation, still herself, but deeper and more resilient. She used her fame to amplify social voices. In music, she conveyed strong political messages, turning each melody into a statement. In literature, she opened up through her memoir, "My Name is Barbra," helping audiences better understand the real person behind the spotlight. Even in real estate, she demonstrated independence not for luxury, but for the desire to control her own destiny. In every field, the mark Barbra leaves behind carries one essential quality: freedom. After decades of shining as the light slowly dimmed, Barbra realized that no award or fame could fill the emptiness within her soul. She began searching for love, and that too became another tragedy in the life of Barbra Streisand. Barbra Streisand once shared that love in her life always came at unexpected moments, sometimes while standing on a Broadway stage, sometimes beginning from something as simple as a hairstyle. The emotional journey of this talented woman mirrors her career-rich complex, yet always genuine and strong. The first man to enter Barbra's life was Elliot Gould, a young actor who performed with her in I Can Get It For You Wholesale in the early 1960s. They met when both were still struggling to find their place and quickly developed feelings during long rehearsals where Barbra made everyone laugh with her natural charm. In 1963, they married just as Barbra began to rise. 3 years later, they had a son named Jason. But that very spotlight became a challenge. Barbra's fame exploded while Elliot gradually felt overshadowed. He once shared, "We didn't grow together because she became more important than both of us." Their marriage ended in 1971, leaving Barbra with a quiet sadness and a profound lesson about the cost of fame. Afterward, fate brought her to Pierre Trudeau, the charismatic and witty Prime Minister of Canada, a man who carried both the strength of a statesman and the depth of a philosopher. Between them was not only attraction, but also a rare harmony between two extraordinary souls. Barbra, a free-spirited artist rich in instinct. Trudeau, a man bearing the responsibility of an entire nation. They found connection through intellect, through long conversations, and through moments of deep mutual understanding. Yet behind the refined beauty of that relationship was a silent struggle. Barbra, who always longed for complete closeness, soon realized that love tied to power inevitably comes with invisible barriers. Trudeau had warmth, gentleness, and a way of caring that moved her, but his duty to lead a nation meant he could never fully belong to anyone. The relationship, kept away from the glare of the media, quietly came to an end. What remained was not scandal, but a gentle longing, a yearning for something that seemed within reach, yet could never truly be held. Not long after her divorce, Barbra met John Peters, then a hairstylist with a free-spirited personality and great ambition. They met when Barbra came to his salon to prepare for a photo shoot, and after only a few encounters, the two were drawn to each other like two powerful storms. John quickly became her lover, her manager, and later a producer working alongside her to create the legendary A Star Is Born in 1976. They were a passionate, creative, and intense couple, but not without fierce conflicts. Barbra once shared that the relationship was both beautiful and exhausting, while John later admitted, "She may have been the greatest love of my life." When Barbra began pursuing directing with Yentl, their differences became increasingly apparent, and eventually they chose to part ways, though they maintained mutual respect. After John Peters' Barbra turned to a quieter man, Richard Baskin, a music producer from the Baskin-Robbins family. They were together for many years, sharing a love for music and peaceful evenings away from the spotlight. Though not dramatic, this relationship gave Barbra a sense of being understood, like a gentle pause between the great waves of her life. When they parted, both remained silent without blame, as if they understood that some relationships exist only to heal, not to last forever. Then came a time when many believed Barbra had stopped searching for love. But in 1996, she met James Brolin on a blind date arranged by friends. She later recalled that moment with a smile. "I thought he would have a beard, but he showed up bald, and I blurted out, 'Who shaved your head?' And we both burst out laughing." That honesty and humor opened the door to one of the rare, enduring love stories in Hollywood. 2 years later, they married, and for more than 2 decades, Barbra and James have remained together in warmth and simplicity. He once shared, "When we disagree, we don't argue, we just take a walk, and then we hold hands again." In the end, Barbra's legacy is not only defined by music, film, or luxurious estates. It is also the story of a soul that learned to love fully, to accept loss without bitterness, and to remain brave enough to open her heart once more. Barbra Streisand's townhouse on the Upper East Side, a structure from the 1930s valued at $17.5 million, is not merely a residence, but a reflection of her childhood dreams. After winning her first Academy Award, she found in it a home that carried both pride and renewal. Every room, every window seems to tell the journey of a girl who once stood on the margins of glory, now strong enough to build her own world. Not far from there is her 2-level penthouse on Central Park West, worth $11.25 million. From that height, the city's noisy rhythm fades into the background, giving way to stillness and deep reflection. There's no ostentation in its details, only a quiet affirmation that even at the peak of fame, Barbra still longs for a peaceful space of her own. For her, it is not just a shelter, but a place to heal her soul after the stage lights go out. She also owns a vast estate in Malibu, California, known as the Malibu Compound. This property includes 3 separate lots, with a main house spanning 10,500 square feet, 8 bedrooms, perched on a cliff overlooking the ocean. The entire estate is estimated to be worth around $100 million US, clearly reflecting her status and luxurious lifestyle. Streisand also once owned the Monrev residence in Holmby Hills, Los Angeles. The 9,500 square foot home with 5 bedrooms built in Mediterranean style was sold in 2000, yet it remains a memorable part of her property journey. Her cars too are like time machines, quietly rolling through decades. The 1962 Bentley S3, with its hand-polished wooden interior and smooth driving feel, evokes the period when she transitioned from Broadway to Hollywood, the era when Funny Girl elevated her to legendary status. The 1976 Mercedes-Benz 450SL carries a bold and sharp presence, reflecting Barbra's explosive spirit in the 70s and 80s, a time when she constantly reinvented herself. And the 1926 Rolls-Royce, calm and enduring through time, stands as a witness to the later chapters of her life, when she no longer needed to prove anything, but simply to tell the stories she had lived. In 1986, she founded the Streisand Foundation. Since then, it has supported more than 1,000 projects, contributing tens of millions of dollars to often overlooked fields such as environmental justice, civil rights, voting rights, and especially women's health. Her commitment to women's cardiovascular health became a pioneering effort. In 2008, she funded the Barbra Streisand Women's Heart Center at Cedars-Sinai. Not for personal image, but out of frustration with a medical system that once treated women as a statistical exception. One of her most notable contributions was funding the Women's Heart Center at Cedars-Sinai Hospital in Los Angeles. In 2009, she donated $5 million to establish the Barbra Streisand Women's Cardiovascular Research and Education Program, aiming to raise awareness and promote research on heart disease in women. Streisand has also actively supported many other organizations such as Planned Parenthood, ProPublica, the Women's Media Center, and the Union of Concerned Scientists. She has contributed to initiatives related to climate change, social justice, and humanitarian efforts for the people of Ukraine. In 2024, she was awarded the Genesis Prize and allocated the $1 million award to 7 nonprofit organizations working in the fields of women's health, climate change, and social justice. Not only stopping at supporting major organizations, Streisand has also contributed to many smaller community-based institutions, notably the Hampton Synagogue in West Hampton Beach, as a way of honoring those who have accompanied her throughout her long career. These charitable activities clearly reflect Barbra Streisand's compassion and sense of social responsibility, showing that her immense fortune is not only for personal use, but also serves to bring positive value to the wider community. Today, having passed the age of 80, Barbra lives with her husband James Brolin on a peaceful estate in Malibu overlooking the Pacific Ocean. There, the ocean seems like a mirror reflecting the many storms of her life's journey. Her days no longer begin with packed schedules or the glare of camera lights, but with gentle sunlight streaming through the windows, the scent of roses in the garden, and a cup of herbal tea on the breakfast table. The energy that once burned brightly on stage has now settled into a state of calm, depth, and completeness. Barbra maintains a balanced lifestyle, walking through her garden each day, practicing yoga, and paying close attention to her diet. Her voice, though rarely heard in public, still exists in quiet moments, warm and full of emotion. She appears less frequently, does not use social media, and has no need for likes or noisy shares. Instead, she spends her time writing her memoir, recording the story of her life in her own voice, an emotional rhythm, slow, sincere, and deeply reflective. Friends remark that the Barbra of today remains sharp and meticulous as ever, yet has become gentler and warmer. Her legacy, worth over $400 million, is managed with care and precision, just as she built her career. Those close to her believe that her will is a thoughtful balance between emotion and reason, fairly distributing assets among Jason, her stepchildren, and charitable foundations, ensuring that what she has built will continue to make an impact. If one day Barbra Streisand passes away, the question of who will inherit her fortune remains uncertain, as she has never publicly disclosed the details of her will. With such immense wealth and an independent nature, she may not leave everything to her only son, Jason Gould, but instead consider distributing it between her family and the charitable organization she deeply cares about. At the age of 83, Barbra Streisand still retains her creativity and unique appeal. Yet she cannot escape the tragedies of old age, declining health, the passage of time, and a new generation stepping onto the stage, forcing her to confront the division of her $400 million legacy. Do you admire Barbra Streisand and her timeless songs? Or do you think that when the day comes that she is gone, who will inherit her legacy? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel to continue exploring the life and career of this legend. Thank you for watching.